Hey, everybody, this is Jonah Lupton, your host of the Startup Sense podcast. Thank you so much for joining us today. We hope you enjoy the episode. Great guest. I try to bring on great guests every day, and I think I'm pretty successful at that. This is actually the first time I've brought a guest back for a second appearance. So a few years ago, I interviewed Jonathan Kay, co-founder of Apptopia, and back then they were running a marketplace for buying and selling mobile apps. And then a couple years ago, they did a pivot into this new business model, which we're going to talk about, providing data and analytics for the mobile app industry. So let's welcome Jonathan to the show. Jonathan, how are you, man?
Life is good, Jonah, man. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thanks for coming back again. Like I said, first time that I've had someone come back, so I'm excited. Tell us about what Apptopia is doing now and how it's different from what you guys were doing a few years ago when we first spoke.
So today, Apptopia is a mobile app market intelligence company, which essentially just means that we're able to accurately estimate downloads, revenues, usage, and SDK data for every mobile app and every publisher in the world. So essentially, we're a tool to help the developers, ad networks, investors make better decisions, data-driven decisions, and just increase their likelihood of being successful. Previously, we had run a marketplace where you could broker the exchange of mobile apps, which, while is not our focus now, definitely led us to where we are today.
So when did you decide that old marketplace business model just wasn't working and a pivot was really needed in order to continue the company?
Yep, it's a good question, and there's an important clarification there. I think the model was working. It just, if me and you and someone else started the company, life would be good. We'd have a lot of cash. It just wasn't a venture backed business, and we had already gone down the venture capital path.
Right.
Having said that, probably mid 2014, early to mid 2014 is when it became apparent to my partner Ellie and I.
So how much money had you guys raised prior to that pivot?
I think about $1.8 to $2 million.
Okay, and I know Mark Cuban was one of the early investors. So what kind of discussions were happening either internally or with your investors to really make that final decision, like, okay, we're going to do this. This is the business model that we need to pivot into. So, did you have to do more hiring? Did you have to raise more capital? I mean, I'm assuming you had to build a lot new technology, right?
Yep. Building a data company is definitely technology intensive and very high fixed costs, just in terms of infrastructure. But yeah, you asked a ton of questions. I'll dive into all of them. So essentially, we'll start with the investors. So it was a decision that Ellie and I made, and we spent a lot of time making it. Essentially, other than Mark Cuban, most of our investors really didn't understand the decision. And I don't say that from a standpoint of disagreeing. I say it from the standpoint of, they had initially invested in a marketplace, and the economics of the marketplace was something that they understood and they were comfortable with. And they don't understand the, big data and analytics and market intelligence space. And so it was something that was very uncomfortable for them. And, outside of Mark Cuban, he was really the only one that reinvested from our initial round of investors, primarily just due to a lack of comfort with the industry that we were moving into.
Right. Gotcha. Okay. So, I mean, there's other market intelligence companies out there that are doing, market intelligence for other types of industries. So what made you think that, there needed to be market intelligence for mobile apps?
Yeah. So essentially kind of the 500-pound gorilla is App Annie. And I was sitting in an investor meeting yesterday with my business partner, Ellie, and he said something that I thought was just like really, really interesting and descriptive. And he said that if App Annie did their job well, we wouldn't exist. And I kind of love this because it's very much why we exist today. App Annie is a huge first to market player. 500-600 employees, just under $200 million raised, really successful company. but they've left an unbelievable amount of breadcrumbs in their path, big gold breadcrumbs, and they've just made a lot of mistakes along the way that you can get away with when you're first to market and you kind of capture the top of the market, but it's spawned a need for secondary and third players in the market, and we were one of few people who had the actual data to compete with them, and so we did.
So what are you guys doing different or better than App Annie?
Yep. So really, it's just about making the data accessible. And when I say accessible, you might just think cheaper, but I don't want you to let your mind fall into that trap, because cheaper is just one way that data can become more accessible. The second way is, I don't know what your background is, Jonah, but most people we work with are not like technical in nature. They're not comfortable with SQL tables and Tableau and like working with millions and millions of rows of data. And so App Annie made a business off of selling large chunks of raw data in Tableau to huge business intelligence departments at Disney and King and Zynga. And we kind of came in and said, hey, that thing that you took 5 steps to do, to that data point that you wanted, we're just going to build a tool that calculates that data point. And so we really built a product and a user interface that gets you to the actual actionable insight much, much more quickly, and has allowed the data to be now accessible by product managers, user acquisition managers, marketing managers, entrepreneurs, just making the data more accessible, not only from a cost standpoint, but from a usability and a product standpoint as well.
Okay, awesome. So what types of companies, you mentioned a few already, what types of companies or investment firms, I assume it's probably venture capital, are using Apptopia? Or maybe even a better question is, how many of them are using it?
Yeah, so how many would be thousands? To name a few, like of our most exciting customers, Google is a customer, Facebook, Mattel, Adobe, Universal Studios, Mobilityware, Mixpanel, Localytics, Chartboost. So lots of ad networks, lots of analytics companies, lots of major developers, pretty much all across the board.
And what do they typically pay per month? How do your pricing plans work?
Yep. So we pretty much have 2 different types of offerings. We are kind of one of the only providers today that don't make you schedule a demo in order to buy the product. So you can actually buy the product online through our website. Plans start as low as $50 a month and go up to about $800, $900 to $1,000 a month for the web tool, which will let you consume all of the data and use all of our tools online, real SaaS subscription. For larger companies who are looking to actually consume the API or want custom analysis done, we do offer that as well, and it will go up pretty quickly from there.
So if I own a dev shop and we do a lot of mobile apps for clients, and clients are coming into us with ideas, and we want to do a little bit of research for them to try to figure out, what are similar apps, and then what is the success of those apps, what's their revenue model, how many downloads are they getting. That's the type of data intelligence that you're able to provide.
Yeah, that's one prime use case. It's not the only, but it's a fantastic. Right. It's a fantastic one because I can't understand how you could invest the time and the opportunity cost of building something without knowing that that's driven through other people's success, right? That if you look at the last 200 apps that were successful, a high percentage of those better fit the model that you're building. Otherwise, just go buy a scratch off ticket, right? Why even spend the time building the mobile app? Just play the lotto, right? You need to there needs to be some logic behind these decisions, and this is why we exist. This is why we provide the tools,
especially for investors that are typically very analytical.
Yeah, and again, man, we're really trying to make the tool. We are data geeks at heart, but we're trying to make the tool a non-geeky tool, right? We're trying to make the tool easy to use for people who are not data driven. That's like a big motivation for people who work here.
This is Jonah Lupton, founder of the Lupton Group and host of the Startup Sense podcast. Are you struggling to find the right tech team to build your company's website or mobile app? Maybe you've developed a product but need help with your go-to-market strategy, including branding and marketing. Well, stop worrying, because my team at the Lupton Group can assist you with all of those needs. We specialize in helping entrepreneurs and startups of all sizes launch and grow their businesses. For a free consultation, you can email me at jonahlupton@gmail.com or visit our website at luptongroup.co. So what's been the best, avenue or marketing channel for you guys to acquire your customers over the last couple of years since the pivot?
Yeah. So two best channels are press and events. So press is we're very fortunate that our product is our best marketing avenue. So like if somebody wants to talk about Snapchat, I can tell you, how many downloads they got yesterday, or how much money they make in in-app purchases. And so we're again lucky that the subject of our product allows us to be mentioned in a lot of press articles. So it creates a lot of good organic curiosity and new prospects to the website. And the second is events. We just live in a small business world where the face-to-face is still really, really relevant. It's one of the channels we see the strongest ROI from.
What types of events are you referring to?
Oh, I mean, there's a bunch of gaming conventions. There's a bunch of mobile conventions, mobile marketing conventions. Conventions is probably the wrong word. They're 500-600 people events. Some big ones like GDC, Casual Connect, Mobile World Congress.
Do you guys sponsor them, or you get a booth set up, or both?
Yeah, so it's typically 60-40 sponsorship. But even when we sponsor, half of the people we send are just feet on the ground, not at the booth.
Okay. I mean, do you guys have dedicated BD reps or sales reps at the company now?
Yep. So we have 7 dedicated sales reps, 2 dedicated business development reps.
Gotcha. And they're going after mostly enterprise stuff?
No, it's actually largely SMB still. And for the sake of definition, like SMB would be any app developer that makes over $10,000 a month in total revenue.
Okay.
Just to put some perspective on it.
There's probably a lot of them out there, right?
Yeah, there's a lot too. There's just under 100,000 that all fit that threshold. And the reason that we do sales to that audience is because people need help understanding how to use data. And that's a big part of our sales cycle. It's there's a coaching aspect that I refuse to skimp on.
Now, I mean, I know you mentioned our pre-call that FlipTopia is the marketplace business that you guys kind of spun out of Apptopia, for buying and selling apps. And I know you guys are not super active running it anymore, but it's still a website. It's probably still generating some traffic. Does that website provide any lead generation into this new business model?
Not really. I mean, it started as a data acquisition kind of Trojan horse for us, and it was a good business, but it's not really lead generation. Mostly just because it typically works with the real bottom of the tail. So people that are under the threshold where it makes sense for them to be buying and looking at data.
So now that you're running a SaaS company, by all measures, I guess, what are some of the metrics that you like to look at on a daily or weekly basis to, try to determine the health and stability of the company? If you guys are growing properly, what are some numbers that you like?
Yeah, and so this is actually a pretty fascinating question because my opinion on this has changed recently. So I used to be obsessed with net new MRR and churn metrics, and I realized that it was all kind of bullshit, and that it was all driven from behavioral analytics. And what I mean by that is you can actually discover who's going to churn well before they actually churn. It's all about feature adoption. And with a tool like Apptopia, it's really easy for us to track how many pages people are looking at, how many reports they've downloaded, how many alerts they've subscribed to, and you can actually project almost exactly who's going to renew, who's going to cancel based on this type of feature and product adoption. And so we've started to focus kind of all of our analytics effort on that level.
So the more active they are in setting up alerts and really using the system, the more likely they are to continue their service subscription.
Yeah, of course. And like I choose these words really carefully because I think this correlates with all SaaS businesses, right? You have to like sell and sell and sell and resell every single month. Even if it's an annual deal, you have to resell again and again and again. These metrics are direct correlation to where you need to be investing that time, the reselling time.
What are some of your, you don't have to give us churn rates, but maybe conversion rates, I guess? Like, so for instance, this morning I signed up for a free trial on your website. Like what percentage of people are converting from that free trial into a paid subscription? Do you feel comfortable sharing those numbers?
I don't feel comfortable sharing those exact numbers. However, I can tell you it's embarrassingly small percent. And
why?
it's,
any reason why?
Yeah, there's definitely a reason why. So essentially, we'll be pushing out a new kind of front end to the product in the next week or so. And essentially, we're completely doing away with the free trial. And it will become a freemium product where you kind of have access to a substantial amount of data that you can't get anywhere else on apps for free forever through Apptopia. And that change is driven at the kind of mistake that I was alluding to before, which is that free trials are tough because it assumes that person wants to buy right now. And if they're not willing to buy right now, you really give them very little way to interact with the product outside of that moment in time, right? So like you come to the site, you play around with the site. After a couple minutes, you're going to hit a paywall. Your free trial will be over. Maybe you get distracted, your wife calls you, and then you come back and then your trials run out. And now you don't have a reason to interact with Apptopia anymore. And 2 months down the road, when you actually need the product, we're not top of mind, right? And so we created a really, really, really narrow path to success, whereas the freemium model is going to create a very big top of the funnel because it might cannibalize even some of our really small sales. That's how much data we're going to give away.
Right.
But at the end of the day, like there will be a substantial user base that comes to Apptopia and gets value every day. And the value of being top of mind is priceless, at least based on our experience.
What are some of the other SaaS companies that do the freemium model that you really think do a nice job with it?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think Join.me has done a really good job of that, actually.
Join.me, they do like screen sharing, right? Screen sharing in conferences.
Yeah, exactly. And it's built by LogMeIn, which is this like old, stale, just enterprise brand. And they spun out Join.me and kind of brought on a whole new team for it. And it used to be paid only, and we know a lot of people over there. And when they pushed it freemium, they're like they had more leads than they knew what to do with for paid by going freemium. So I know they've had a lot of success with that, and even Apptopia is kind of a prime example of someone who used that for free and now pays them like a meaningful amount of money each month.
So since this pivot into this new market intelligence business model, what have you personally learned as a CEO? Or actually, I think you're the COO, right?
Yep, that's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what have you learned as a COO that's made you better today than you were 2 years ago?
Ooh, you're asking me to get real deep here. I like it. Yeah, I guess I've learned two things. The first is that it's okay to give up a little bit. You know what I mean? Like, and maybe give up is the wrong word choice, but like it's okay to change, and
right.
that is so counterintuitive. Like if you asked our investors in 2014, they would have kept plowing their money into the marketplace for years. And like we knew that wasn't going to yield benefits, and like it's hard to not just keep taking the money and not just keep going down the path. And like it's really, really hard to not put a shiny silver lining on everything, to actually look at like the shit that lives underneath the floorboards. And I think if you look at most successful entrepreneurs, they're people who don't mind kind of staring that in the face. And I think it was really, really difficult to learn that. But we did, and it's definitely something that's changed me forever. I would say the second thing that we learned is that you can't always do what you want. Like doing what you want and doing what's best for the business are often very different things. And good leaders do what's best for the business, not what they want. And again, I think if you look throughout history, you'll find a lot of examples of really egotistical leaders who do what they want because they can. And I think the best leaders know that even though you own a company, you really have almost no power to do what you want. You're just the person who has to do what's needed. And I think that's hard to learn as somebody who's young and somebody who's in their first venture. But this pivot definitely made that lesson pretty clear to me.
So you were one of the first companies to get in Boston to get an investment from Mark Cuban. Do you want to just tell us real quick how you found him, how you got him involved with the company?
Yep. So previous to starting Apptopia, I had spent about 3 years at Grasshopper, which has since successfully exited to Citrix. And when I was working at Grasshopper, I worked pretty closely with the founders there, and we spun off a couple companies out of Grasshopper. One was called Chargeify, which was a recurring billing system. Mark Cuban had invested in Chargeify, and I had been a kind of a driving force for helping grow their initial customer base and sales. And so when I had left Grasshopper to start Apptopia, I kind of had a warm introduction to him as someone who he knew could go from nothing to something. And, typically that's the hardest part.
Awesome. And then obviously you guys have gotten him into a couple extra rounds of funding. So what's been the biggest challenge for the past year?
Probably hiring good people.
And what is your recruiting strategy? I mean, I know you've mentioned to me before that a lot of your engineers are overseas. So how did you get set up with overseas developers, and what's the benefit of using them versus hiring in the US?
Yep. So when we started the company, and 6 years ago, we had a very small budget, and so we hired a engineering firm that we could afford to build our minimum viable product. And the two guys at this company who had worked on our product, they were like caged animals, I guess is the best way I'd put it. Like you just knew that they were meant for something more, and like the effort that they were putting in was just not correlating with how they were being compensated. And so we actually hired them out of this firm, and they became our first 2 full-time engineers. And these guys were just kind of like leaders within the Ruby on Rails community in Ukraine. And so we were able to use them to expand organically, and hey, who's the best person that you worked with in your past? Who's the best person that you worked with in your past? And we were able to build this really organic, tight-knit team of engineers in Ukraine and in Finland who are just above average human beings, above average coders and experience and effort and commitment. And we've never turned back.
I mean, in terms of salary comparisons in Boston, hiring a really good engineer with at least 5 to 7 years of experience is going to cost you somewhere closer to 200,000.
Right. Yeah. So I would say salaries in Ukraine are going to be about half of that, half to a third of that. And we pay closer to half of that. And cost of living is probably 1/5 that. So we pay pretty competitively.
What trying to think what else? What are some of the plans for the company in 2017? I know you mentioned that you guys are rolling out kind of a new front face to the website, and you're switching over to the premium business model. In terms of marketing or hiring or raising more capital, what else is on the roadmap?
Yeah, so all of the above. Essentially, 2015 was about successfully pivoting. 2016, the company tripled in size in terms of revenue and employees, and it was about really like proving out the model beyond any doubt. 2017 is about just like completely going guns blaring, and we've brought on 3 senior executives, one in analytics, one in product, and one in marketing, all of which who have substantial experience bringing companies from single-digit millions to double-digit millions in annual revenue. And this year is all about making things more methodical and building a dangerous machine.
Now that you guys feel very comfortable with the product, now it's time to really pour some gas on it, right? And hit the acceleration button.
Exactly correct. Yeah.
In terms of what advice could you give to someone else that is building a company and maybe in the back of their mind they're thinking, I wonder if this is the right business model for us, or if this is really the right product. Maybe I have the market or industry right, but the product is just there's not enough adoption or growth, similar to what maybe you guys were facing a couple of years ago. And maybe there's just part of them wants to stay the course, because that's the course they started on, and part of them thinks that maybe they need to do a pivot like you guys did. What advice or insight could you share with them?
Yep. So two things. The first is you need to think really critically about whether the assumptions that you're basing your business on are things that you believe and you think, and things that you've heard, or things that you see and feel and touch, right? Like, are you actually taking money from people? Like, we took money from people from day one, right? Like, and I could look you in the eye and say, hey, I have a business that I know people will pay money for. Are you basing your assumptions based on hypotheses? Or are there real tangible people with tangible credit cards that they're taking out? The second thing, and maybe the most important thing, is you're an entrepreneur, man. Like, you're working 13, 14, 15-hour days. You need to carve out time every single month to just look in the mirror and just kind of gut check yourself, because it's really, really easy to just have spent 3 years doing something and not looked up once. And it's not that you were stubborn, you just never stopped to look. And I think it's just really important, and borderline, you have a fiscal responsibility to every month, every 2 months, to stop and actually look around and see what you're doing and why you're doing it, and make sure that the assumptions that you had a year ago or 2 years ago are still valid, because they might not be, and that's okay. But if you don't know that, it's not okay.
Now that you guys are getting ready for some massive acceleration, what do you think is a healthy growth rate for a SaaS company, where you can kind of find that happy balance between growth and burn? Yeah,
so we typically try and stay within 15 to 20% month over month growth.
Okay.
I think at some point probably 10 to 15% is okay, but during a high growth period, it has to be 15 to 20%.
Right. And what are the risks if it's too high, which is a problem for some companies, right? I mean, they almost grow too fast, and they're burning too much cash and they can't raise capital. I mean, have you seen companies face that?
Yeah. So I think the problem that I've seen there is that it's not that they're growing too fast. It's that the fast growth sparks bad decisions. So I've seen a lot of companies fail because they experienced so much growth in a month or two, and then they were like, oh, we need to hire 15 people. We need to spend $100,000 on advertising. Like,
Right.
let's take out this, debt financing. And it's just like, holy shit, man, you had 2 months. You need to calm down, right? Like, you need to calm down and like do it for 6 months and then hire more people. It's just, I think it's the dangerous thinking that comes as a result of the fast growth, which is dangerous.
Right. I mean, I think, fast growth gets even, right. Like you said, it gets dangerous if you're spending way too much money to acquire that growth. And then that's not necessarily sustainable. If especially those clients are not really paying anything. I mean, at least you guys, you've created a nice revenue business for yourselves.
Exactly.
Couple last questions, I guess, kind of unrelated to the business, but, do you have any personal goal that you would like to accomplish in 2017?
Yeah. So I would like to, trying to think of the right way to word it, but my personal goal is to do less of the things that I have done in 2016. And I think, like, allow me to just explain that for a minute.
Yeah, sure, definitely.
Essentially, like, when you start the company, you do everything. And, as you grow, you do less of everything, but you're still doing too much. And I continue to hire people that are significantly smarter at me. And I need to just put more autonomy and more power and more decision making in their hands, and focus on the things that I know that I'm very, very good at, which is, large sales, strategic partnerships, etc. And I'm hoping in 2017 to rely more on the people around me and do less myself.
So maybe wear less hats and delegate a little bit more.
Yeah. Just bringing in specialists who, know how to do things better than anyone else here in the company, and then giving those people a short leash, but trusting them to do their job and stepping back.
Perfect. Couple last questions here, I guess. What is the single best piece of advice that you've ever gotten from someone?
Wow. Single best piece of advice that I ever got from somebody.
Could be a friend, could be an investor.
Yeah. So I think something that I learned from the founder of Grasshopper, his name was David Hauser, was simply that at the end of the day, regardless of what you do or what you sell, people do business with people that they like and people that they like working with. And at the end of the day, you can actually differentiate yourself by just being a better person. And it sounds a little bit like unicorns and fairies, but at the end of the day, like, there's very few businesses that exist where it doesn't require interacting with people. And I've tried to build a culture of people here that are just easier to work with and care and are nicer and are quicker to respond and more attentive and actually care about you. And it's just something that I took from David Hauser.
Awesome. Yeah, he's a very, very well-respected entrepreneur because he bootstrapped Grasshopper as well, right?
Oh yeah, those guys are the story of all stories.
I'll have to get him on the show sometime. I've tried to reach out to him. I haven't really had any success, but maybe you can send an email intro because I'd love to have him come on the show and share that story, especially because they had the exit, which I didn't even know about until you mentioned it. So thank you for that.
Of course, of course.
Kind of last thing, do you have a favorite blog or software service that you either follow or like to use, or maybe one of each?
I don't, man. I don't. I'm sorry to disappoint you with your last question.
I can always edit it out. But there's no like third party service that you guys that you personally like, whether it's for managing metrics or hosting conferences, anything.
Yeah. So I'd say one of the tools that we're starting to use more is it's called Segment.io. I'm not sure if you've heard of them, but essentially it's it's like a centralized analytics tool. So when you spend time as like a SaaS company integrating with like Mixpanel or Google Analytics, you spend weeks and weeks of time integrating with them. Segment.io, it's like a centralized analytics tool that you that you'd integrate with, and then you can switch between whatever analytics tools you want. So you're not tied down to one specific analytics tool. It's just been hugely helpful for us as it pertains to like helping track behavioral analytics, and just a good place to start.
Cool. Yeah, I'm on the website right now. I haven't heard of them before, but I see they work with some pretty big businesses like Instacart and DraftKings and Hotel Tonight. So over 7,000 clients. So they must be doing something right.
And Apptopia.
And Apptopia. I know you got to get your logo on here sometime soon.
I know.
Well, cool, man. Thank you so much, Jonathan. Really appreciate you being on the show. Any parting words for the audience, or how can we find you online?
Yeah, so you can always email me at jon@Apptopia or at JonathanCK on Twitter. And my advice to people would be, just keep doing what you're doing. Like, don't let the haters bring you down. Just, keep on.
And when do you think Apptopia is going to switch over to that new business model, the freemium version?
In the next 7 days, for sure.
Sweet. Okay, so pretty soon. Cool. Yeah, keep me posted on that. I'll check back. And once again, I want to wish you and the company a great 2017. Happy we got a chance to talk again, and best wishes and more success for you.
Feelings mutual, man. Have a good one.
You too, man. Thanks, care. Bye-bye.